Hello, Deep Thinker, and welcome to the Idea Shepherd, where I don't just store ideas, but I teach you how to steward those ideas into meaningful insights that shape yourself and others as well. And in today's video, we are going to talk about how this one little moment where I encountered these two beautiful flowers here turned into this trail of insight, right? We have many different trails and trails off of those trails. And I'm going to walk you through the journey of how all of this came to be, right? And that's the idea is I don't want to just show you another dashboard. I don't want to show you another graph view. I want to show you what it looks like to think and process and reflect and make connections. The tools used in this video are Sublime and ChatGPT, and I'll be going back and forth showing you how I use them. And if you want to check out Sublime for free, click the link below. I promise you, it is one of those things that you're like, okay, I can't let go of this. I need this in my life. Why didn't I get this sooner? All right, so for context, we are in a canvas inside of Sublime. Right, Canvas is like a whiteboard feature that they have that allows you to bring in cards here that you've created, and then also make connections, draw, all that kind of stuff. So this is a visual way of seeing this moment kind of play out, right? And this is all about intentionality and design, boring things and building relationships. It kind of just went everywhere. So here's the moment right here. I came across while I was walking these two beautiful flowers here, and I just happened to notice like the different shades of purple. Let me bring in the original GPT conversation right here. Right, I took the photo, uploaded, and I just started kind of spilling my guts on what I was thinking and why this drew me in. And it's it's kind of just crazy to me that the details of this flower, how the shade of purple that's darker complements the lighter shade, and even down to, if we zoom in on this photo, even down to like this, the fade, the gradient from, this dark purple to white and then back to this light purple. Like, what the heck? Like, that's one of those things that I'm trying to get better at, is slowing down to see the details of these crazy things, but they're also these boring things that we just kind of pass over. These are two little flowers in a massive field, right? But if we pause long enough, we can start to see these moments right here. Not only that, we can start to think, okay, what does this want to teach me? What am I supposed to learn from this? And so I jotted down my thoughts, okay? What drew me in was like I mentioned, the colors and how they complement each other, and this, this for me is another confirmation that God is a designer. He designs with intentionality, and so what I did was I started to ask ChatGPT to ask me questions, right? Instead of having it kind of riff back, which I have done that before. We go back and forth. In this scenario, I was like, I want you to ask me a question one at a time so we can kind of unpack this, what I'm thinking, what else is there beyond just, okay, this is a beautiful flower, and man, it's crazy how, intentional the design is. But what else is there? And so there's questions that I was asked, and I just kind of let it flow as far as my thoughts, right? The first question was, when you noticed the gradient in the flower and connected it to God's design, what did that stir in you? And this was the thought, is, well, God is a God of intentionality. And if we were to stop and consider just all the little things that make life possible, the fact that I'm breathing air, that I'm able to, have vocal cords and able to speak into this phone and record my thoughts, the flower that I came across, right? All these things. Now, both of these here led to this card right here, and that is titled God is Intentional When He Creates. And if I go into the settings here, I've not labeled, but I've added this to a collection called Creator Compass, which is my collection of ideas, thoughts, and all of that. So when I revisit this collection, it reminds me of who do I want to be as a creator? How do I want to create? That kind of stuff. So that's the card that ended up in Sublime. It is in my library, and it's on this board, or this whiteboard right here as well. Okay, I want to keep going in the trail. The next question, if God is that intentional in designing flowers and sunrises, how does that deepen your perspective on his intentionality in designing you? That was this question here, right after I gave these other thoughts. And immediately what came to mind is the scripture in Matthew, where, now this is talking about anxiety, the cure for anxiety, right, is the title of this section of this passage. But it's all about, consider the lilies of the field and how they grow, neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. A little flower, right? And so I'm thinking about, okay, that scripture is talking about anxiety. Like, if God takes care of these flowers and they're more beautiful than Solomon and everything that he had, how much more does he care about you? And then also, and with that is, how much more does he put into the design of humans, of how you're wired and your personality and the things you love and the things you're like, I'm not really into that. Right? That's on purpose. Just as purposeful as the flower that I started to look at and I started to think about. So, if he cares for the design of flowers, how much more does he care about the design of me? This scripture has always been about trusting God and knowing that when I consider, because it even says in this passage, consider, which means to reflect, to think about, to ponder. Like, don't just look at the flowers and pass by. Like, stop and consider the lilies of the field. Think about it. And then as I think about that, I'm like, oh my gosh. If I do what this actually says, if I think about it, I'm like, oh wow. He takes care of, and he puts so much thought into the design of a flower. How much more does he care about me? How much more does he put into the thought and design of my life? Anyways, I just like, man, that was a really cool moment right there. All right. And if you notice, what I'm doing with the arrows here, I mean, it's very simple. You click on the arrow, and I believe there's shortcuts. Yeah, A, E, all that kind of stuff. I can just draw one arrow to the next card and make sure it touches, and it'll follow it wherever I move that card. But you can also label these arrows. So that's what these labels are, is to show the flow of the trail of thought. Like, why is this connected to this, basically? And so I'm doing that throughout. And in this particular trail, I'm just showing the questions. All right. Now, the next question was, if God is that strategic and intentional about your design, how might that change the way you view the ordinary parts of your life, the ones that don't always feel designed? And I'm not trying to answer perfectly, right? In the ChatGPT conversation, it was just, let me just kind of, whatever comes to mind, I'm going to say it. And I do record. I don't write it or type it out. I record it. So I'm walking and I just kind of talk it out. And that's what's going on. Now, this kind of led to this thought of, often the things that are most boring are the things that are most useful to us. Like, for me, it was the hands of a clock or on a watch. Like, it's just kind of boring, right? Nothing delightful about the hand on a clock, but it's so useful. When I want to know what time it is, I need to look at the hands of the clock and then bam, it tells me. Or a compass, right? It's ordinary, it's boring, it just points a direction. But when I'm lost, when I need to know what direction north, south, and east and west is, like that becomes super useful and all of that. And then I thought, man, there's the habit of for me of walking just about every day, and it's boring because it's the same route over and over again, and it seems boring. But although I keep finding things to think about, which is kind of cool, but it's the same route, basically the same route every day. But it's probably one of the most useful habits for me. It is one of those keystone habits that knocks down a lot of dominoes from just one activity. So that's where that came from. And then I had another card and a thought off of this, which was that the hands of the clock are only useful when they're connected to gears that turn them. And this is the idea of faithfulness, right? And or being planted, staying power. So I said we cannot forget the impact of staying power. Staying connected to the things that keep us turning, that give us life. There are things that don't give us life, that are pulling us the opposite direction. Yes, we need to prune, get rid of those, cut those off. But we can't cut off the things that are giving us life. In this case, the analogy kind of kept going, and I was like, I need the gear so that it can turn the hands, right? And then GPT was like, okay, what's the most important gear in my life right now? Well, something that I really, and this is for me and my family, we're in a new season, but something that's really important, especially in this season, is building relationships. But I have realized, being married for quite some time, having kids, and just, living life, that in relationships, nothing is going to be convenient all the time, right? Relationships are the most hardest but most rewarding thing that we can build in our lives. And I think that's why when we do build them, when we take the time to build them, it's so rewarding, right? Because it's so hard. But I need to reframe, because there will be inconveniences, and those inconveniences they're not actually inconveniences. They're opportunities to add another brick, right, to that relationship, to the layers of that relationship, which builds and builds and builds. So as you can see, with just this one trail right here, we went from adoring the flower to God is intentional when he creates, to the intentionality of creating and designing humans, to the boring things in life of hands on a clock and the compass, to we need to remember that we need to stay connected to the gear that is turning us, the thing that gives us life. The thing that's giving me life right now and that will continue to give me life is relationships. But I need to embrace the fact that there will be inconveniences when I'm trying to build a relationship. That's the hard part. So you can see here, like it's just really cool how I can visually see these thoughts. And along the way, I can go into this, in this card right here, and go off into a whole nother world if I were to go into that. And let's see if I can open this actually. And I'll show you what I mean. So I just opened up, and I've clicked into this card, and now what I'm seeing off of this thought that I had, now what I'm seeing are ideas that other people have saved and also that I have saved related to this card. And I can go down, I can filter, I can shuffle the ideas and just kind of look at them and keep shuffling if I wanted to. I can filter to just my library if I wanted to. Like, I haven't done that yet because that's not a part of this video. But if I wanted to, and if I wanted to keep going and make a new trail, I could do that very easily. You can see the power, hopefully, of Sublime here. And I'm just scratching the surface. All right. A few other things have popped up here, a few little trails. There's one tiny little spin-off right here, and that is when it's labeled SR, that means the Sublime relation, meaning that when I go into a card and click on it, I can click on related, this little magic wand looking thing, and when I click on that, it'll show me related cards within this board, within this canvas. I just showed you that as well on the other screen, but this is another way to do that very easily. And then when I want something or see something that draws me in, then I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I can add it to the board just by clicking and dragging. So one of those ones that was in my library, right? I wanted to label it, this is a Sublime relation. That I didn't think of it, but Sublime resurfaced this idea, this thought for me, and it was in my library. So I had already saved it, which was something I specifically wrote down. And this is all about how God makes trees and people make tables. And there's a role right there. There's different roles of like how God can create what only he creates. But he asks us and invites us to imagine, what can you imagine this tree to be now? What can you imagine what is in your life, what is right in front of you to be? And how can you create it? Because we are created to create. But there are things that in our life that God puts in our life, right? Where we can just we can imagine what it can be. So that came up as a relation to God is intentional when he creates. So that's a cool connection right there. And this is from, I don't know who it's from, but it's Beauty as a Compass for Truth. And this is all about, what drew me in about this was that if you regard the world as a work of art, like what happens when you do that? That right there is a game changer. Because every day on my walk, I'm trying to regard the world and the world around me, the grass, down to the drops of water, the dew on the grass, like those very small things that we pass every day are works of art. Now this led to something else. You have a line right here or a connection, and it's labeled what I thought of. So when you find something that resonates, that's not something you wrote down, and maybe it's in your library and you saved it, or it's not in your library, somebody else saved it. Either way, to extend this and to make it even more meaningful and to turn and steward these into your insights, you need to keep going and not just say, oh, this is a cool connection and then stop there. But it's more about, okay, I found this connection. Now, what do I think of as I read this, as I encounter this, as I think about this? What does it make me think of? So that's what is going on right here, is a Gregified note, an atomic note, and it is titled The World as a Work of Art. Right? And it's all about, if we regard the world as a work of art, that's where this idea came from. That's what I wanted to write about. And the fact that God is a master artist, that he, in the beginning, it's literally in Genesis, the first verse of the Bible, God created. Right? So if God created, if you created something, it is a work of art. It tells us that he formed and he created two different things, two different words. And I just remembered about the stars he set in place, and also that he created a greater light, which is the sun, and a lesser light, which is the moon. Like he intentionally creates. And if the world is a work of art, which it is, maybe our role is to walk through it like a museum, pausing, beholding, asking what it makes us feel, what it reveals. And lately, I've been captivated by leaves, like the veins of leaves and the different shapes and sizes of leaves. It's just crazy. Here's another thing. God is the ultimate artist. He embeds usefulness inside beauty and beauty inside usefulness, which led to another extension, right? Something else. I was like, oh, let me continue this further. To embed beauty into usefulness and usefulness into beauty, I immediately, when I was thinking about that, thought, oh, well, that's exactly what a UX designer does. And that's what UX design is, embedding beauty into usefulness and usefulness into beauty. It's not that you only get usefulness or you only get beauty. You can do both because God did both, which means that God is the first UX designer, which means that Nielsen Norman and all that, whenever they coined the term UX designer in 1980 in the 80s, whenever it was, like that actually, they may have coined it and they may have this is what this is called now. Actually, no, God created at the beginning and he was using both utility and beauty, which is all about UX design. So actually God is the first UX designer. And I don't know, it just was like, man, this is another cool connection, another way, another card for me to add to my creator compass. Okay. So there's another trail that came off of one of these other cards. And now this one, often the things that are most boring are the things that are most useful to us. I used the related feature and I found this card. This little article right here called The Art of Dailiness, which is a really cool name, by the way. Love that title. I've never heard of this guy before, but apparently he is a professor and he started this 100-day project and with his class, and it turned into something. But it's not really this that kind of I was intrigued by, or the whole of it. It was really like, okay, the 100-day project, that's cool. Like that, what is that? So I added this to the board, not because it's something that really like relates and resonates. It's more of what it leads to that resonates. As I dove into the article, because I can dive into it if I click on the Art of Dailiness, somebody saved this article and I saved it as well. And then I can click into the article itself and start kind of diving into the article. But there are two different trails here. There's two things that I thought of. The first thing was that quantity breeds quality. And what I was reminded of as I was reading through this article about the 100-day project was the study of the photography students. And there's one group who they were tasked with quantity, okay, like take as many pictures as you can. The other group was tasked with quality, take one photo and perfect it. And the group that took tons of photos were the ones that actually ended up growing in their craft. And so it aligned with this idea that I can create for 100 days, and that the power is in the 100 days, not necessarily what I'm creating, but the fact that for 100 days, I'm going to create something, which was a pretty cool connection right there. Now, the other thing that I thought of is I was drawn to the 100-day project immediately without even reading the full article. I just read like the prompt, I think it was, the 100-day project. Because like he says it in here, it's not something really that's original. It's like what we do every day. And I think, well, that's true. The reason I'm drawn to the project and creating something consistently for 100 days is because that's what we're born to do. That's when I'm like in my happy place, right? Is when I'm creating. And that's because that's the way that we were designed, right? So participating in something like that, a 100-day project, or like the other thing that I did a few years back was Ship 30 for 30. I'm sure you've heard of it. If you haven't, it's a great program to teach you how to be consistent in writing. But that the reason so many people are joining these programs or wanting to be a part of this is because that is exactly what we want. It's what we were designed to do, is every day is to create something. And so I jotted this insight down. Consistency isn't boring. It's the soil where creativity flourishes. We're not just called to create. We're wired to create consistently. That's the thing right there. We're not just wired to create. We're wired to create consistently. What small creative act could you repeat daily, not for perfection, but for the beauty that only comes with time? And as I was looking at this, I did the related cards again, a related feature, and it came up with something from Chase Jarvis: establishing a daily practice, infuse your world with meaning and success in work and life. That sounds cool. We feel better, awake, fulfilled, whole. By creating regularly, we access a new source of vitality. Turning an idea in your head into a tangible reality is one of life's great satisfactions, whether the end result is a story, a photograph, a meal, or a business. 100% agree. Love it. I was also reminded of this idea that even like God was consistently creating. He continues to create. So if I'm going to, if I'm made in the image of the Creator, and I'm going to copy what He does, and He shows me the example of how to create, I should be doing what He does, which is continually to create. My friend, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Again, if you want to check out Sublime for free, click the link below. Also, I do have a newsletter and a few resources for you in the description below if you want to check them out. I'll see you on the next video.